Shalom, truth seekers. So here's an update on the equinox, posting all sundial information that I can track down to this Facebook group, solar tracking observations confirming the creator's times via Genesis 1:14. And if you check the description below this video, there will be a link for a shared folder where you can go, and if you don't have Facebook, you can still access all these pictures by date and location if you wanted to take a look at any of the data closer. So just a quick recap of today. Let me scroll down a little. Things were getting a little challenging to keep track of everything with the time zones and everything. It's kind of confusing. But I don't know that I ever heard the end of how Wendy's day went. I think she was marking on the 21st, but I didn't hear how that went at the end of the day. Okay, Erin, I know she was here's her post. She had an armillary today. I don't think she had the time to do the straight line for the whole day today, but she did do the armillary. And the cool thing about the armillary is if you can set that thing up correctly, the cool thing is you don't have to wait all day to confirm like the straight line or the day of the equinox. Like if you set this thing up right, you can actually tell at first sunrise this line will actually, I guess, be centered on that arm, and I've seen it in years past, and she does both the armillaries and the table at the straight line test, and she seems to have good correlation in the past. So she was not seeing a straight line, and she is located in the western United States. On the 21st, she was not seeing the straight line. So then there's a data dump here of everybody else that came in, and I guess I'll try and walk through it in order. So this was let me see, came from Auckland, if I'm saying that right, Auckland, New Zealand, and it is looking very close. Am I gonna, yeah, let me try and do that. So very close to a straight line. I know this was, I think it might not have been the longest spread of data here, but it's looking very close. There might be I see a slight bump in the string there. So sometimes if you don't get those early morning and late evening points, things can look straight on multiple days around the equinox. So you want to make sure you get those early morning and late evening points to compare to the midday point. But yeah, that was very close. There were a couple other truth seekers collecting data in Australia. This came from Alan in Eastern Australia. And he said it gets confusing with the dates again, but I think actually he was, I heard from him early this morning, and I know he was saying for sure that the data on the 21st did not look quite straight. And I think he even was saying maybe in the morning on the 22nd for him. No, I get confused with the timeline. No, I think it's just the 21st. It was just like 19 hours ago. No? Gosh, yeah, it's confusing. That's why there's so much to keep track of. One thing that it's hard to do, but it's very helpful if you're able to have a picture with the information associated with this data, like what was the location, what was your Gregorian date for that location, and then what time of day was your first mark of the day and what time of day was your last mark of the day. So I guess I'll move on to the next person, but I just want to say from the conversation I had with him, I know he was talking like he was projecting it was possible that he would be seeing the straight line on the 23rd. But it was looking very close, and he was just wondering if he would really see if this line could even get any straighter, but that's what his thoughts were. This is coming from Queensland, Australia, and can I zoom in on that? I can't quite read that. You can, if you look at that, again, really close, but I think there might be a slight curve. Like you can see right there, it looks like that point is slightly lifting off the line. Some of those points are slightly lifting off the line. It's close. Moving on though, so I mean, people following them, it did sound like it much more clear. Some of the people following had some good data that clearly still was showing a curve very close. Like this might be the day before, and that's why it's so close. But this came from Wales, UK, and you can definitely still see a curve. And I think something might have gone wrong with that point at the bottom of the screen, because that's a pretty big jump. I don't know if the paper was a little crinkled or something, but even without that last data point, if you just kind of ignore it and look at the rest of that line, you can still see a slight curve from the majority of those marks. That's what it looks like. Okay, so it'll be stay tuned tomorrow. Oh, actually, I think I heard the weather was going to be quite bad in Wales tomorrow, so we might unfortunately not hear more. You can see the water on the table. So that's good. She had perseverance to get through that one way or another. The ink she used, marker or whatever it was, didn't get washed out by the water. So good job getting through that. This is in West Virginia, and this was my data from today. And just to give people an idea of what you can accomplish if you're in the woods, like I have a little 1 acre piece of property that like has woods on all sides. And so I have been watching in the morning, around lunch, and at evening. I've been watching my homestead, the perimeter of it, just looking around see, I'm pointing here at like a little ray of sunlight that was coming through. Like everything is shaded in the morning, but the sun poked through somewhere in this cloud, these trees and these leaves, and there were little spots like this that would pop out. And I was watching them for a week leading up, trying to find the best place where I could get as early in the morning and late in the evening, and also that midday mark. And I didn't pick this location, but this was just a good example to show you kind of what you might be looking for if you live in the woods and you're looking for a place to put your sundial. So I did eventually actually find a spot in the corner, back in the very corner on the other side of those trees back there. And I put my board down on the ground, and I think actually maybe that patch of sun on the wood pile was just a little higher, shooting to that back corner. And this is what it looks like. This was what it looked like around noontime. Again, or solar noon, just a little piece of sun, enough for me to get my mark, and that's all that's important. I was able to get a mark in the morning, I was able to get a mark at lunch, and then there's another mark that was tricky to get later in the evening, because the thing with these trees, the sun was going over these trees, and it had to get on the back side of these trees, and it just kind of cut in just a little bit into the corner up there on the other side of these trees, just for like 5 minutes in the evening, but it was enough to kind of get a mark. The other challenging thing I ran into, so you can see, there's the nail, there's the first data point of the day, the pencil is pointing to it on the left from the 21st, that was around 7:55 a.m., And then I got on point at the end of the day around 6:49 p.m. So a good spread of data considering, but I had my board oriented not quite the right way. And I heard from Danon today he was having frustration with that, but sounded like he had more success than I did. So this is not recommended, but I had to add another board to catch that last point of the day, and it really only popped up like for 5 minutes, and I had to like sprint around the homestead to find another board, and like I was like, oh my goodness. So that's something to watch out for, and that's why it's a good idea to practice like at least a day or two ahead of the big event, so you make sure little things like this don't prevent you from actually confirming what you're looking to see, like the straight line or whatever it is. So I mean, tomorrow, now that I see this, I'll be able to rotate my board slightly to catch that. But yeah, I oriented that's what the board was oriented, and it missed the mark, so it wasn't perfectly due east. But even if it was due east, I don't think it was quite catching everything. So that I don't know exactly what to say, other than it's a good idea to get out a day or two before the big event to make sure you're oriented correctly. And so I just grabbed a board to see, and I dropped it onto, you can just barely see it. There's my last point of the day on the left side there, or right side there. And then, again, the pencil mark is pointing at that other mark. And you can't see any of those midday marks under the board there. And so the next picture, I lift it, and you can see there are all those marks. So I would say from this data, it was not quite the straight line yet. It's close, but it didn't quite make it. So I kind of got excited by Squirrely Nation's out in Oklahoma. He tried something with his yard, and I've been wanting to do this, use like a broomstick or something out in the yard, but like I don't have any flat ground here in West Virginia. That's like unheard of. But it occurred to me that I might have a small piece of flat ground. It's not flat, it's actually on a hillside, but the entire hillside is like consistently, it's flat. Like if I had a gigantic board, like you could lay that board down on the hillside and it would be flush. That's what I mean by flat. So that it can be a sloping yard or parking lot or what have you, but it does need to be flat. It can't have like dips and bumps in it. So anyway, I did use this broom handle right in front of the chicken there, and I put a white flag in the ground. And the funny thing is, you can just barely see it there, but the turkey was like pecking at the flag. And I have a couple other construction flags in the yard. You can see, sorry. You can see these pink ones back here. But I got like a power cord running to the chicken coop, and we got it running through the yard here. So I put some flags in the ground just to make sure I don't hit it when I mow the lawn, or I remember to disconnect it. But anyway, we had some flags out in the yard, and it was the very first time I've ever seen a flag like uprooted and laying on the ground next to this power line. Like last night it happened, and I figure the turkey was the culprit of all days. And so when I saw him starting to pick at this thing, I was like, oh no. I covered it. So I got a second mark of the day, and then I put this rain barrel over my first flag just in case I wanted to make sure that guy didn't pull up my flag. And the funny thing is, I came back up to the house and was about to go in, and I looked down, and that guy, I don't know if you can see him, that turkey jumped right up on top of that barrel. And he was determined to just explore all that. But it worked out. I had my point protected one way or another. So yeah, I just wanted to show you again what you can accomplish, So this was my midday mark on the board, and if you remember, there was just a little patch of sunlight on my board, and I turned around and I snapped a picture, and the sun's up behind there somewhere. But even though you can't quite see it, I mean, there are these little patches that can come through. So I mean, don't totally give up. If you do live in the woods, if there's a will, there's a way. But anyway, so here's what the taller sundial ended up with at the end of the day, and you can see, again, a slight curve in this data set that matches the same curve I had on the small board. So, I just barely got this too. Like, it was even a challenge to get this. Like, this wasn't very ideal. Like, it was 2 or 3 hours less data. I think it was at least, it was between 2 and 3 hours less recording time than the small board I had. But because it's a taller sundial, these movements are more exaggerated, and sometimes you can get away with less of a spread of data because it's just, everything's so exaggerated, you could just see it better. And I mean, this barely worked out for me today, and I think it was, it was just about a couple hours, 2.5 hours maybe, less time collecting this data, but it did look like it correlated to what I came up with on the board. And so this is Danon. Is this the last one? Yeah, that's the last one. So Danon, again, he was having trouble with his board orientation of it. He picked a great location. I don't know exactly where he is, but he's out in California, and he's just been practicing so diligently this summer, and he got out here, and he's got this nice isolated spot, and I guess he pointed his board at the rising sun. But the thing is, if you're not located right at the equator, pointing your board at the rising sun isn't going to point your board like due east. Like, you would need to point your board away from the sun. You would need to actually look at a compass to point your board due east, and it's not going to be pointing at the sun unless you happen to live at the equator when you're doing this during an equinox event. But it worked out for him. His last point of the day and his first point of the day were on the board. He had a nice big board, and so he didn't run into the issue I did. And so wasn't able to get me a close-up of that middle data point there, but he did tell me it looked like his middle point was about a 1/16 of an inch, I think, off of the line still. So again, I guess a final confirmation of the day that it sounds like the straight line hasn't been seen just yet. So actually that might progress through the night tonight. I don't know. Folks in Australia and even all the way to me, like last year, it seemed this spring the Creators International Dateline actually landed right in the middle of the United States. I've never seen it land on a landmass like that before, but there were some people seeing the straight line on one Gregorian date and then some others seeing it on another date. So that split actually happened somewhere between West Virginia and Oklahoma, I think. So it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. Squirrely Nations is pretty confident in Oklahoma that he's going to see the straight line tomorrow. So we'll see. And I know Remnant of Light, their YouTube channel is called that. They will be collecting as well. So and lots of experience there. So that'll be a good confirmation. And we'll see. I'm sure there'll be a number of other people collecting, and so I'll keep you posted. Again, I try to post everything to this Facebook group immediately, and then maybe at the end of the day, like today, I'm able to put a video together. But it's been a long day, so I'm gonna wrap this up. Stay tuned to see what happens tomorrow. Let me know if you have any thoughts or comments. If this was your data and you want to clarify something, please reach out to me or leave a comment. Emails avoiceoftruthandlove@gmail.com. And we'll see what happens tomorrow. So shalom, and may Abba bless as you continually seek out his truth and love with a pure heart.